That's nice, isn't it?
Does look kind of cool.
Does that not look really, really cool? You ready?
Mm-hmm.
How many years?
4.
3. That
do be kind of satisfying though.
Between 1982 and 1983, some of us would have opened a very special box indeed. It was magical, and of course it meant the world to us. It was of course the ZX Spectrum home computer. 37 years later, I opened another box last weekend, an equally special box because it contains a brand new ZX Spectrum home computer. But is it as magical this time around? Let's find out. The ZX Spectrum is a much loved 80s home computer, especially here in the UK. Of that there is no doubt. Over 5 million of these little machines were sold across its entire model range, and retro gamers love it to bits to this day. Now for those of you who don't know, in April 2017 it was announced on Kickstarter that a new, enhanced, updated and more powerful Spectrum was going to be made called the Spectrum Next. It was to be fully backwards compatible with the original Spectrum, but with a host of new features such as new graphics modes, faster CPU speeds, more RAM, HDMI and VGA outputs, an SD memory card slot, Wi-Fi module, real-time clock and a whole lot more. The look of the computer itself was going to be designed by its original designer Rick Dickinson, who sadly passed away in 2018 before the Next was completed. It's truly gorgeous, and as soon as I saw the campaign I was hooked and backed it immediately. Proud backer number 2981. Now the bare bones were ready in 2018 and began shipping, however the case was another matter entirely. There have been numerous delays and the cased version has been a real challenge for the team to put together. There were too many issues to go into this video, but mainly keyboard problems, membrane problems, and the actual plastic case itself caused all sorts of production issues. And of course it didn't help that the original manufacturer of the case pulled out of the project halfway through. But finally, last weekend, 3 years later, our beautiful cased Spectrum Next Plus arrived, and here it is. When I opened that box, I can honestly say, this thing took my breath away. It is absolutely gorgeous, and I'm just so glad the team pushed and pushed for it to be the perfect product we were all hoping it would be. The keyboard itself feels absolutely stunning. It's a world away from the original Spectrum Plus. It actually feels like a high-end laptop keyboard, and it's an absolute pleasure to type on this thing. Taking a quick look around the Next, you can see on the left hand side a reset button, drive and NMI buttons, and these access certain features and functions. On the front we have 2 standard 9-pin Atari style joysticks for those classic old Kempston joysticks that you may still have lying around. No need to plug in a Kempston joystick interface on the back anymore, those old joysticks plug straight in here on the front. On the right hand side there's nothing but this lovely curved decorative edge with the coloured inserts. Rear panel has a 9V DC socket, an HDMI port, USB ports if you have the expanded version with the Pi board. Still has the ear, mic and audio out jacks. It's got a VGA port, a PS2 port for keyboard and mouse support. The Spectrum Next even supports loading games from tape if you really want to give this a try, of course. I've not tried it as yet, but I do have loads of tapes lying around the shed, so I will be giving it a go in a future video. The Spectrum Next is roughly the same size as the Spectrum Plus, although it does sit a little bit flatter. The way it's presented in its box is gorgeous, and you also get this gorgeous spiral bound manual, complete with a futuristic bit of artwork that's a tip of the hat to the original ZX81 and Spectrum manuals we see here. Now the manual itself is proper old school, and it covers everything from the initial setting up, all the different modes, and it gets into some serious in-depth stuff that I'll probably never use. But it's great to have it there, and I definitely intend to dig it out and have a read through this. It would be a shame not to, so much time has been put into this manual. So all in all, as a package, it's stunning. I have to say it is, and yes, for me the magic was still there opening this box. It did feel like 1983 all over again. I'm not sure how much endorsement Sir Clive gave to this project, but he really should be proud. It's got his name on it, and it really does feel like a Sinclair Spectrum. It's definitely a worthy successor to the Spectrum lineup. So that's enough waffling on about it. Let's take a look at this thing powered up. If you press space on boot, you are presented with this configuration screen here. So you can use the up and down arrows to choose what configuration you'd like to apply to your Spectrum Next on boot. So you've got Next Standard, Next LG, 48K ROM, 48K, 128K, +2 and +3 versions of the Spectrum. And of course you've also got ZX80 and ZX81 emulation built in there as well, which is brilliant. I've not really had time to dig through the other versions yet and figure out what they are. So for the purposes of this, I'm just going to choose the standard Next configuration and let it boot up. So once the Next is booted, you are presented with this Next ZX OS screen, and there's a couple of pages of information here. If you press the Enter key, you can scroll through and read a couple of pages of information, or you can jump straight in by pressing the space bar, and you're presented with this rather familiar looking menu that we've probably seen before if you're a Spectrum +2 or +3 owner. Now there are a number of different options here. You've got browser, command line, Next Basic, calculator and more. If we go into more, what have we got? Tape loader, CPM mode, ROM carts you can load in as well. You've got 48K basic version. Let's have a quick look at that. We've all seen that before. Let's try pressing J. Yep, and the old key commands still work. So you can just do a load, quote, and away you go. I'm assuming that will allow you to load in from tape. So going into your browser presents you with this very easy to use and navigate browser menu, and this is showing you is your mounted volume. So this is the contents of my SD card. So if I, for example, go into my backup folder, click Games, go into Next, there's some of the Next games that I've got loaded. So to load any of those up, obviously you just go into the folder and highlight the program that you want to run. The browser, very easy to use, very nicely laid out, and makes loading games an absolute pleasure. So easy to use. So one of the first games I wanted to show you was a particular favourite of mine from my arcade days as a kid. And this of course is Konami's Scramble that was released in 1981. This is currently free to download, and it's been coded by Rusty Pixels, Mr. Jim Bagley and co, and you can download it from the website. The link is below there. This is free. Go and get it. It's absolutely brilliant. It's absolutely spot on. I mean, just look at it. It's pixel perfect. If I had this as a kid at home, I'd have gone nuts for it, to be honest with you, because obviously there was nothing like this at home to play on. We had our versions of Scramble on the various consoles and computers of the time, but it was nothing like this. The BBC version actually wasn't too bad. I think it was called Planetoid. That was quite good, and it looked pretty faithful to the original. But this is something else. It's free. Go and download it. So this is a folder on my SD card that I created, and I copied a load of classic Spectrum ROM games to the SD card, and let me just show you how easy it is to play a classic game. So for example, let's go into one of everyone's favourites. Let's have a look at Jetpack, and it's ready to go. And there you go, there's Jetpack in all its original glory. So it really is easy to play all your old favourites on the Next. Just copy them to a folder on the SD card, load up the browser, and away you go. And of course, should you want to put yourself through the pain of loading from tape, you can do that as well. Another original classic favourite of mine, this is 3D Star Strike. Now this is running on 48K mode with a clock speed of, I think it's 3.5 megahertz. What I'm going to do is show you what happens when you up the clock speed of the Next. So if we reboot this, so at the top of the browser there you can see it says 3.5 megahertz. I'm just going to up that to 7. An awful lot faster. Still playable. I think if I went any faster it would be chaos. So there's 3D Star Strike running at 7 megahertz on the Next. So let's take a look at some of the new Spectrum Next games that have been brought out. So this is a remake of the classic C64 game Warfork, and this was one of the first games I played on the Next when it was demoed at Revival a few years ago. This game was on the memory card when I unboxed my Next, so I assume, I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming everyone that's bought the Next has got this on their memory card. If not, I think it's being released soon anyway, so you can just go and buy a copy. Well worth it. It's an absolute brilliant little blaster. Here's another brilliant game, Baggers in Space. Now, I played this again at Revival about 2 years ago now, and I was sold on the Next once I played this. Have a look at this. This is due out soon as well. I think it's pre-orders are being taken right now, and it's due to ship anytime soon. This is a classic take on Jetpack, and it also has elements of other games in there as well, a bit like Cybernoid, as you'll see in a moment. Absolutely great little game this is. Now here's a game that I bought, 3 years ago. It's been knocking around the shed for years. I've been waiting for my Next to arrive. Let me just show you this. So if you played Attic Attack back in the day, you'll recognise what this is about immediately. Lovely looking game. And it's nice to actually get to play it at long last. It's been sat in here for ages. I'm not very good, as you can see. So I must say that this little machine is far more than just another retro computer that plays old games. It's a completely new machine, and it's capable of far much more than the original lineup of Spectrums could ever accomplish. It's not just designed for retro gamers, but for people who are hobbyists, who want to program, who want to open this thing up and have a play around. And I'm really excited about what is yet to come. There's a load of new games being developed for the Next, and I think over the next year or so we're going to see some really cool stuff released for the Spectrum Next. So it's been a long wait. Yes, it's been 3 years, but it's brilliant. I love it to bits. Thank you very much for watching, and we will speak to you again soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.